Ever been on a late-night bus and felt like you were the only person in the world? That's exactly how Claire Donovan must have felt on her last known night. But for her, that feeling was just the beginning of a truly terrifying mystery. It was 10:47 p.m. in Phoenix, Arizona. The air was thick and still, that classic desert heat that makes everything feel a little surreal. At the terminal, 29-year-old journalist Claire Donovan was the lone passenger waiting for the last Route 94 bus. She'd just finished a late interview for a story that tragically would never see the light of day. She stepped onto the bus. The driver, an older man with tired eyes, gave her a quiet nod. The bus was completely empty, a hollow shell filled with the smell of gasoline and the low hum of the air conditioner. Claire settled into a seat by the window, her headphones ready, and watched as the familiar city lights of Phoenix began to shrink in the distance, placed by the vast, dark emptiness of the desert highway. Everything seemed normal at first. It's just another late-night commute. But a few miles down the road, a sense of unease started to creep in. Claire noticed the bus wasn't making any of its regular stops. Not a single person got on and no one got off. She glanced at the driver's reflection in the window. He was a rigid silhouette, his gaze locked on the road ahead. Something felt off. She looked up at the digital route display above him, trying to confirm she was on the right bus. But the display was glitching, flickering wildly between random numbers, completely unreadable. It was like the bus itself was having a nervous breakdown. She checked her phone. It was 11:03 p.m. Her heart skipped a beat. They should have passed her stop 5 minutes ago. Maybe the driver had just missed it. She reached out and pressed the button to signal a stop. Nothing. The little red light didn't illuminate. The request chime didn't sound. There was just silence. "Excuse me?" she called out, her voice sounding small in the empty bus. The driver didn't even flinch. He didn't turn, didn't respond. The bus just kept rolling forward, steady and silent, deeper into the dark. At this point, Claire's initial unease was blossoming into genuine fear. This wasn't just a missed stop. Something was seriously wrong. Gathering her courage, she stood up and took a few tentative steps down the aisle, her hand gripping the back of a seat for balance. As she got closer to the front, she could see the driver's ID badge hanging from the rearview mirror, swinging gently with the motion of the bus. The name printed on it was T. Lawson. Claire's blood ran cold. She knew the regular driver on this route. His name was not Lawson. This man was a complete stranger. Her throat went dry. She swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper, more to herself than to the silent driver. "Where are we going?" But there was no answer. Only the low, monotonous drone of the engine and the endless ribbon of dark asphalt unfolding before them. The bus had become a capsule, hurtling into the unknown. No other headlights pierced the darkness. No houses dotted the landscape. Claire pulled out her phone again, desperate for a lifeline. No signal. She was completely cut off, alone with a stranger who was driving her into the heart of the desert night. And that is the last confirmed moment anyone ever saw Claire Donovan alive. When Claire didn't return home, her partner reported her missing. The investigation began immediately. The police confirmed she had been at her interview that evening and that her intention was to take the last Route 94 bus home. But when they checked with the bus company, the story took a bizarre turn. The driver who was officially scheduled and logged for that final Route 94 trip was the regular driver, the man Claire knew. And according to his logs and the bus's GPS tracker, he completed the route as scheduled. He made all the regular stops, and his bus was empty when he pulled into the depot for the night. He had no memory of picking up a single passenger. So, if Claire Donovan didn't get on the official Route 94 bus, what bus did she get on? Who was the mysterious T. Lawson? The police ran the name through every database they had. There's no licensed bus driver in the state of Arizona or any neighboring state matched that name. The description Claire gave to a friend in a text message earlier that evening waiting for the last bus, "Hope the driver isn't the grumpy one," didn't match the man who officially drove the route. It suggested she was expecting a regular driver, but who she ended up with was a ghost. The case went cold almost as quickly as it started. There were no witnesses at the terminal who saw another bus. There was no physical evidence. The bus Claire boarded seemed to have materialized out of the desert heat and vanished back into it, taking her with it. It became one of those chilling local legends, a ghost story whispered among late-night commuters. The phantom bus of Route 94. Over the years, a few strange reports have trickled in. A handful of people, always late at night, always on desolate stretches of road around Phoenix, have claimed to see an old, unlit bus driving silently with no destination displayed. Some have even reported seeing a solitary female figure staring out the window, her face pale in the faint moonlight. Are these just tricks of the light, products of tired minds on long, dark roads? Or is Claire Donovan still out there, riding a bus to nowhere, forever lost in the desert night? The disappearance of Claire Donovan remains a haunting and unsolved mystery. It's a chilling reminder that sometimes it's the most ordinary moments, like waiting for a buskin, turn into the stuff of nightmares. It makes you wonder what other secrets the desert holds, hidden just beyond the reach of the city lights. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this incredibly unnerving case. What do you think happened to Claire? Was it a random, tragic crime, or something else entirely? Let me know your theories in the comments below. And if you enjoy diving into mysteries like this, please hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss our next story. Stay safe out there. It was just after dawn, 6:20 a.m., when a highway patrol officer noticed something out of place. A city bus, parked strangely on the shoulder of Route 94, miles from its designated route. The doors were ajar, casting long shadows in the early morning light. The interior lights flickered weakly, a ghost of their former brightness, but the engine was cold, having died hours before. The officer cautiously stepped aboard. The silence inside was heavy, unnatural. The bus was empty, no driver, no passengers. But then he saw it. On a seat near the back, a phone lay abandoned. Its screen was cracked, displaying a message frozen mid-thought. Something's wrong. The driver isn't. The message was left unfinished. This was Claire Donovan's phone. Beside it, her bag sat open, a notebook peeking out. The page was filled with hurried, frantic scribbles. Man, not on schedule. Badge says T. Lawson, not on city records. This single clue sent investigators down a rabbit hole. They scoured the Phoenix Transit Department's employment logs. The name Thomas Lawson was nowhere to be found. In fact, that name hadn't appeared in any state employment database since 1978. It was as if the driver, T. Lawson, was a ghost himself. With no record of the driver, they turned to the bus's security cameras, hoping for a clear answer. The footage only deepened the mystery. At 10:49 p.m., the camera captured Claire Donovan boarding the bus, just like any other night. She looked calm, unaware of what was about to unfold. 3 minutes later, at 10:52 p.m., the video feed dissolves into a cascade of static. A complete blackout for 23 agonizing seconds. When the image finally flickered back to life, the bus was a tomb on wheels. The driver's seat was empty. And Claire was gone. The only movement was the faint blur of desert lights flashing past the windows as the driverless bus continued its journey into the unknown. Police were baffled. The initial theory was abduction, but the scene told a different story. There were no other tire tracks on the dusty shoulder, no footprints leading away from the bus. Inside, there were no signs of a struggle, no overturned seats, no scuff marks. The only fingerprints found belonged to Claire and the regular driver, the one who had, by a cruel twist of fate, called in sick that very night. It was as if Claire Donovan and the phantom driver had simply vanished into thin air. The bus was towed back to the city depot, a silent metal witness to an impossible event. As forensics teams combed through every inch of the vehicle, a technician checked the driver's seat pocket. Tucked deep inside, he found a small, faded photograph. It was an old black and white portrait of a man in a transit uniform, his expression stern, his eyes seeming to hold a dark secret. Stitched onto his jacket was a name tag, Lawson. The back of the photo was even more chilling. In faded ink, it read, Phoenix Transit. 1977. How did a 40-year-old photograph of a non-existent employee end up on this bus, on this specific night? No one had an answer. The story should have ended there, another cold case file destined to gather dust. But the bus wasn't finished telling its tale. That same night, a mechanic was working the late shift at the depot. The abandoned bus sat in the far corner of the garage, dark and quiet. As he worked, a sound made him freeze. a faint crackling voice coming from the bus's radio. It was just static at first, but then a whisper emerged from the noise, a single, chilling word. Claire. ... double quotes. The mechanic, unnerved, immediately went over and switched the radio off. The silence of the garage returned, but the feeling of being watched lingered. He tried to shake it off, to convince himself it was just his imagination playing tricks on him in the dead of night. But about an hour later, he heard it again. The radio on the haunted bus was on, its dial still tuned to a dead silent frequency, and from the speakers, the same static-laced whisper echoed through the empty depot, calling out for the passenger who never got off. What happened to Claire Donovan? Who was the mysterious driver? T. Lawson. Was he a ghost forever driving the phantom routes of Phoenix? Or was it something far more sinister? The case remains open, a modern ghost story played out on the lonely desert highways. The bus sits in an evidence lot, a monument to the night. A woman, a driver, and the truth itself simply disappeared. What do you think happened? Let me know your theories down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoy mysteries like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss our next investigation. Stay safe out there. Have you ever heard a story so chilling it makes you question reality? A story that pulls you into a rabbit hole of secrets and shadows, where the line between the living and the dead blurs. Tonight, we delve into one of Arizona's most baffling unsolved mysteries, the disappearance of Claire Donovan and the phantom bus of Route 94. By the evening after she vanished, Claire Donovan's face was plastered across every news station in Arizona. The headlines were all the same. Transit reporter vanishes mid-route. The image that accompanied them was even more haunting her. City bus, empty and abandoned under the stark desert sky. It was a scene straight out of a horror movie, but for Claire it was terrifyingly real. When detectives gained access to her apartment, the first thing they noticed was her laptop, left open on the kitchen table as if she'd just stepped away for a moment. The last document she was working on was a file titled Route 94 something S off. Clicking it open revealed a labyrinth of notes, a digital breadcrumb trail leading into a decades-old tragedy. The name that appeared over and over was Thomas Lawson, a bus driver who had supposedly died in a fiery crash on that very same route back in 1978. The official story was simple, almost mundane. Lawson's bus suffered a catastrophic brake failure, sending it careening off a remote desert cliff. It was a horrific accident that claimed the lives of everyone on board. But Claire's notes painted a much darker picture. She had uncovered inconsistencies, contradictions that didn't add up. And next to the official cause of the crash, she had scrawled a single, chilling question, circling it 3 times in bold red, cover up. This is where the story takes its first truly strange turn. When investigators tried to corroborate the details of the 1978 crash, they hit a solid brick wall. There was no record of it anywhere in the state archives. No police reports, no emergency services logs, nothing. It was as if the incident had been scrubbed from history. The only piece of evidence that the crash ever happened was a single, yellowed newspaper clipping hidden deep within the microfilm archives of the Phoenix Public Library. The headline sent a shiver down their spines. Bus 47 disappears. No bodies recovered. Disappeared, not crashed. And no bodies were ever found. Things got even weirder when a reporter from Channel 9 reached out to the transit department for information on Thomas Lawson. Their response was blunt and immediate. No such employee has ever worked for this department. It was a dead end. Thomas Lawson, according to official records, was a ghost. But then, a breakthrough came from an unlikely source. An old, retired mechanic who had worked for the Transit Authority for over 40 years. Saw Claire's story on the news and felt compelled to call the police. He remembered Thomas Lawson. He described him as a quiet man new to the job, who preferred the solitude of the late-night shifts. The mechanic recalled unsettling conversations with Lawson just days before he and his bus vanished. He'd talk about hearing voices on that route, the old man said, his own voice trembling with the memory. Said he thought the desert was talking to him. The desert. Talking. What did Lawson hear out there in the vast, empty darkness of Route 94? Is it the wind or something else? Something ancient and hungry? 2 nights after the mechanic's phone call, the case took another terrifying leap into the unknown. A frantic 911 call came in from a long-haul trucker traveling along Route 94. He was panicked, his voice cracking as he described seeing a city bus driving slowly through the pitch-black desert. Its lights were unnaturally dim, and its digital route sign wasn't displaying 94. Instead, it was flashing the number 47, the same number as Thomas Lawson's ghost bus from 1978. Police units were dispatched immediately, racing to the location. But when they arrived, the desolate road was empty. There was no sign of a bus, no engine noise, nothing but the whispering of the wind. However, they did find something. In the sand, right where the trucker claimed to have seen the bus, were a fresh set of tire tracks. But they didn't lead anywhere. They just ended, as if the bus had simply materialized and then vanished into thin air. And nestled inside one of those tracks, glinting under the officer's flashlight, was a single object, a press badge. It belonged to Claire Donovan. She had been on that bus. She had found what she was looking for. The final piece of this terrifying puzzle was found back at the impound lot inside Claire's abandoned bus. Digital forensics experts were trying to recover the corrupted data from the onboard security system. They managed to restore the audio from the last few minutes before the video feed mysteriously glitched out. At first, all they could hear was static and the low hum of the engine. But as they enhanced the recording, filtering out the noise, something else emerged. First, there was the sound of faint, steady breathing. It was calm, rhythmic, Claire's breathing, and then a voice broke through the static. It was low, raspy, and steady, a voice that seemed to carry the weight of the desert itself. It spoke only 6 words, but they were enough to freeze the blood of everyone who heard them. The voice said, "Route 47 never ends." And right after that, the recording cut out. The line went dead. Just like the tire tracks in the sand, Claire's journey on Route 94 simply stopped, leaving behind a silence more terrifying than any scream. What is the truth behind Bus 47? Was Thomas Lawson a victim, or something else entirely? And where is Claire Donovan? Some say on quiet nights, if you drive down Route 94 and listen closely, you can still hear the rumble of an engine in the distance and see dim lights approaching in your rearview mirror, the lights of a bus that never reaches its destination, because Route 47 never ends. What do you think happened out there in the Arizona desert? Let me know your theories in the comments below. If you found this story as unsettling as I did, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the unknown. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there. Hello, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into a story that will make you question the very roads you travel. It's a tale of a missing journalist, a forgotten highway, and a mystery that stretches back decades, all unfolding under the relentless desert sun. Our story begins 3 days after the press badge of journalist Claire Donovan was found on a desolate stretch of highway. Detective Elena Marks, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for solving the unsolvable, found herself standing at the edge of Route 94, a road the locals had chillingly nicknamed the Nowhere Road. The wind kicked up dust, stinging her eyes as she stared at the asphalt dissolving into the horizon. The case had hit a wall. Claire was gone, and so was the bus she was reportedly on. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. Frustrated but undeterred, Elena returned to her office, deciding to dig into the history of the route itself. She pulled up archived city blueprints, her screen glowing in the dim light of the precinct. And that's when she found it the first crack in the case. Route 94, the road where Claire's badge was discovered, wasn't on any recent maps. It had been officially decommissioned, taken off the books, all the way back in 1983. Why? The records pointed to a fatal bus crash, an incident shrouded in mystery and never fully investigated. Elena's heart pounded as she read the name of the driver in that decades-old report, Thomas Lawson. This was no longer just a missing person case. It was a ghost from the past reaching out. Quick search revealed that Lawson's widow, Margaret, was still alive, residing in a nursing home in Prescott Valley. It was a long shot, but it was the only lead she had. Driving to the nursing home, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that she was on the verge of something big. She found Margaret frail and quiet, her world shrunk to the size of her small room. But when Elena mentioned Claire Donovan's name, a flicker of recognition ignited in the old woman's eyes. Her stillness was more telling than any words. "She came here," Margaret whispered, her voice raspy with age. "That woman. a few weeks ago. She asked about Tommy. Margaret's gaze drifted towards the window as if seeing a memory play out on the glass. She said she was going to ride the route he died on. I told her not to. I warned her. Elena leaned in, sensing she was close. What did you tell her, Margaret? What did you warn her about? Margaret's eyes were clouded with a sorrow that time had not healed. Tommy wasn't crazy, you know. People said he was, after, but he wasn't. He said the company, the bus line, they forced him to keep driving that route, even after the other drivers quit. They were scared. Tommy was scared too. She paused, gathering her strength. He told me the road wasn't real, that it changed every night. He'd drive for hours, but he never reached the end. He'd see the same landmarks, the same signposts over and over again, like he was trapped in a loop. Margaret's hands began to tremble, her knuckles white as she clutched the armrest of her chair. The night before he disappeared, he called me. He was frantic. He said he'd figured it out. That the company was hiding something out there in the desert, something on that road, and the line went dead. A chill ran down Elena's spine, a cold premonition that had nothing to do with the nursing home's air conditioning. A phantom road that changes, a company with secrets. It sounded like something out of a horror novel, but Margaret's fear was real, a palpable presence in the room. This was the same path Claire had chosen to follow. Elena recalled the official report on Lawson's crash. The details were maddeningly vague. The crash site was listed as 40 miles west of town, but the coordinates were inconsistent. Search parties at the time could never pinpoint the exact location. It was as if the desert itself had swallowed the wreckage. "Do you have any of his things?" Elena asked gently. "Anything he left behind?" A nurse brought in a small, dusty box of mementos. Inside, Elena found the simple treasures of a life cut short, a faded wedding photograph, worn driver's ID, and a single folded piece of notebook paper, yellowed and brittle with age. She carefully unfolded it. On the paper, in shaky but clear handwriting, was a cryptic warning from Thomas Lawson himself. It read, "If you see Route 47, turn around." It's not where it says it is. Route 47, not 94. What did it mean? Was it a different road? A code? A delusion? The note offered a new piece to the puzzle, but one that made the picture even more confusing. That night, Elena couldn't rest. The mystery of the Nowhere Road had its hooks in her. She had to see it for herself, to understand what both Thomas and Claire had faced. She got into her car and drove back out to the desert, the city lights shrinking in her rearview mirror until she was alone with the darkness and the stars. Her GPS confirmed she was on Route 94, the decommissioned highway. But after 20 minutes of driving into the blackness, the screen flickered and died. No signal. She was on her own. The road ahead seemed to shift, the asphalt looking older, more cracked. The familiar reflective markers on the side of the highway were gone. There was only the narrow tunnel of her headlights cutting through the oppressive dark. And then she saw it. Up ahead, almost consumed by the shifting sands, was a sign. It was rusty, bent, and barely legible, but as she slowed her car and her headlights washed over it, the number became hauntingly clear. It was a bus stop sign. The number on it was 47. She was in a place that shouldn't exist. Following the footsteps of a ghost, on a road that wasn't on any map. Thomas Lawson's warning echoed in her mind. "If you see Route 47, turn around." But Claire hadn't turned around. And now, standing at the precipice of the unknown, Elena knew she couldn't either. She had to find out what was at the end of the Nowhere Road. What do you think Detective Marks found? What secrets was the company hiding, and is Route 47 a place? Or something else entirely? Let me know your theories in the comments below. This story is just getting started. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the unknown. If you enjoyed this mystery, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapter. We have so much more to explore together. Till next time, stay curious and stay safe. The desert wind whistled a lonely tune, rattling the antenna of Detective Elena Marks' car. She sat parked, headlights cutting through the darkness, fixed on a solitary bus stop sign. The number 47 shimmered, its paint peeling like ancient parchment. A chill ran down her spine, a familiar gut feeling that told her This was more than just another missing person case. This was something deeper, something deliberately buried under layers of dust and time. The disappearance of Claire, who was last seen researching old bus routes, had led her here to the edge of nowhere. Back at the buzzing headquarters, the fluorescent lights felt a world away from the desert silence. Elena dove headfirst into the archives of Metro Trans, the company that once ran these routes. She waded through mountains of files, maintenance logs, dusty schedules, faded payrolls. It was mind-numbing work, a bureaucratic labyrinth designed to wear you down. But then, she found it. A single folder, bound in faded red tape, stamped with bold, ominous letters. Confidential. Internal review, 1978. Her heart skipped a beat. This was it. Getting access wasn't easy. It took hours of calls, pulling strings, and navigating a maze of corporate red tape that was almost as old as the file itself. Finally, the restricted folder was in her hands. She carefully untied the string. Inside, a series of black and white photographs fell out. They showed a wrecked bus, a metal carcass half swallowed by desert sand. The windows were shattered, the frame twisted into a grotesque sculpture of metal. The front of the bus was clearly visible. It read Route 47. Elena's eyes narrowed. The official report said Route 94 was the one that crashed. And then she saw the time stamp in the corner of the photo. It was dated June 12, 1978. Impossible. The official crash had been recorded 2 weeks earlier. Someone had come back long after the bus was declared vanished and documented the scene. But why? Who were they, and what were they trying to prove or hide? Deeper within the folder, she found a handwritten memo. The ink was faded, but the words were sharp. A ghost from the past speaking directly to her. It was from a Metro Trans executive. Route 47 is to remain classified, it read. Do not assign new drivers. Terminate all inquiries. Her pulse quickened. This wasn't just a cover-up of a tragic accident. The company had intentionally, systematically, erased an entire bus route from its history. They didn't just hide the crash. They tried to make it so Route 47 never existed at all. The question burning in her mind was a simple one. Why? What could possibly be so terrible about a single bus route that a multi-million-dollar corporation would go to such lengths to bury it for over 40 years? And how did Claire, a modern-day researcher, stumble upon this ghost? The next day, Elena tracked down Robert Klein, a former Metro Trans engineer who had worked maintenance back in '78. He was an old man now, living in a small, quiet house filled with the smell of stale cigarette smoke and old memories. When she mentioned Route 47, his hands began to shake as he lit a cigarette. His gaze fixed on something far beyond the walls of his living room. They made us scrap those buses, detective, he said, his voice a gravelly whisper. Every last one of them said it was a safety hazard. But that wasn't the truth. Elena leaned forward, her pen poised over her notebook. Then what was it, Robert? He took a long drag from his cigarette, the smoke curling around his weathered face. The buses. What? They had tracking systems, prototypes. We were testing them on Route 47. He paused, as if weighing the risk of saying more. The system malfunctioned. The bus would just disappear off the radar. Madrut. 1 minute it was there, the next. It was gone, like it never existed. Elena felt a shiver trace its way down her spine. And Lawson, the driver? Robert's eyes met hers, filled with a deep, ancient sadness. He complained. He kept telling them the company maps were wrong. Said the coordinates for the route didn't match the actual terrain. That the desert out there, it wasn't what it seemed. He sighed, a plume of smoke escaping his lips. He was right. Of course. That's why he never came back from his last run. He knew too much. Elena's grip on her notebook tightened. What happened to the other drivers? The other mechanics who knew about this? Robert looked down at his trembling hands. They were ... reassigned, or took early retirement. We all knew what it meant. None of us ever spoke about it again. It was safer that way. He understood that some secrets were meant to be kept, not for the good of the company, but for the survival of the people who knew them. Before Elena left, Robert handed her a worn, creased photograph. It showed a group of drivers, young and proud, standing in front of their buses. That's Lawson, he said, pointing to a man with a faint, knowing smile. He stood in front of a bus clearly marked Route 94. But as Elena studied the photo later in her car, zooming in on the digital scan she'd made, her blood ran cold. Behind Lawson, half hidden by the sun's glare on the bus's side panel, was another number. Faint, but there, number 47. The numbers were painted over each other, a sloppy attempt to change the bus's identity. It was proof. They hadn't just erased the records. They had physically altered the evidence. Route 94 was a lie, a ghost painted over the bones of Route 47. That night, sleep was a luxury Elena couldn't afford. In the sterile anonymity of her motel room, she spread everything out across the bed. Claire's research notes, the company's confidential files, Robert's testimony, and the haunting photograph of Lawson. Each piece was a breadcrumb, leading her down a darker and more twisted path. Claire's notes detailed strange geographical anomalies along the supposed path of Route 94. Lawson's warnings about the mismatched maps echoed in her mind. The company's frantic cover-up. It all pointed to a single, terrifying conclusion. Metrotrans hadn't just hidden a bus crash, they had hidden the existence of a place. A place that Route 47 traveled to. A place that wasn't on any map. Claire hadn't just been researching history. She had found a doorway. And now, she was lost somewhere on the other side, caught between the roads that shouldn't cross. As the first light of dawn painted the desert sky in shades of orange and purple, Elena packed her bag. The answer wasn't in the dusty archives or in the memories of old men. It was out there, in the vast, silent expanse of the desert, waiting on a road that officially didn't exist. She turned on her small digital recorder, her voice calm but filled with an unwavering resolve. This is Detective Elena Marks. The investigation into the disappearance of Claire Miller has revealed a corporate conspiracy dating back to 1978 concerning a phantom bus route designated as Route 47. All evidence suggests the route is not a myth. If Route 47 still exists, I'm going to find it. And I'm going to find her. With that, she got in her car, the engine a low growl in the morning stillness, and drove back toward the shimmering horizon, chasing a ghost down a road to nowhere. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into one of fiction's most intriguing mysteries. What do you think happened to Route 47? Let me know your theories in the comments below. If you enjoyed this kind of storytelling, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content just like this. We've got plenty more mysteries to uncover together. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. The sun had barely kissed the Arizona horizon when my car reached the end of Route 94, and where the asphalt surrendered to the vast, empty desert. My GPS, bless its digital heart, simply gave up. Screen flashed a defiant red. Signal lost. Even at this early hour, the air was already shimmering with a heat that promised a brutal day. A lone crow circled overhead, a dark omen against the pale sky. I parked my car, a solitary island on the edge of the cracked pavement, and stepped out into the oppressive silence. But it wasn't just silent. It was wrong. The ground felt strange beneath my boots, and the tire tracks on the road seemed too fresh, looping back on themselves as if they'd come from nowhere and were heading to the same place. Then I heard it. Faint, rhythmic hum, almost too low to register. It was a mechanical sound, like a massive engine idling somewhere deep beneath the sand. My instincts, honed by years on the force, screamed at me to get back in my car and drive away. But my curiosity, the very thing that made me a detective, was a stronger force. I followed the sound, my hand resting on the holstered comfort at my side. The hum led me to what looked like an old maintenance tunnel, nearly swallowed by a sand dune. A rusted metal door, bearing the faded logo of Metrotrans, was the only marker. With a groan of protest from both my shoulder and the ancient hinges, I forced the door open. A wave of cool, stale air washed over me as I descended the concrete steps into the darkness. My flashlight beam cut through the gloom, revealing a long hallway lined with electrical panels. Everything was coated in a thick blanket of dust, untouched for what must have been decades. But then I saw it. A single, blinking red light on a control board. Switch. The label beneath it was stark. Active, Route 47. I do unknow what possessed me. Maybe it was the heat, or the hypnotic hum, or just the puzzle of it all. I reached out and flipped the switch. The hum immediately deepened, a powerful vibration that resonated up through the soles of my boots and into my bones. Somewhere in the distance, I heard the groan and stir of heavy machinery, like a great beast waking from a long slumber.
Ow.
This wasn't just a maintenance tunnel. It was something else entirely. Something operational. Drawn further into the abyss, I discovered a small control room at the end of the hall. It was a relic, filled with dusty, monolithic monitors from another era. I wiped a layer of grime from one of the screens, and to my astonishment, it flickered to life with a crackle of static. A grainy black and white video feed appeared, showing the empty desert road I had just left behind. I watched, mesmerized by the hypnotic dance of static. And then, for just a fraction of a second, the image glitched. A bus materialized on the screen. It was old, the kind you see in vintage movies, with the number 47 clearly visible on its side. It was moving, but not on the road. It was gliding silently across the sand, leaving no tracks, no disturbance in its wake. It was impossible. My heart hammered against my ribs as I looked closer at the screen. In the bottom corner, a time stamp was blinking. The date was today. My radio, which had been silent for hours, suddenly crackled to life, spewing a burst of static that made me jump. Then a voice, faint but chillingly familiar. Detective Marks. My blood turned to ice. It was Claire Donovan, my former partner, who had vanished without a trace, chasing a cold case 6 months ago. The same case that had led me out here. I found it, her voice whispered, distorted by the static. But it doesn't go back. The line went dead, dissolving back into the hiss of an empty channel. Panicked, I lunged for the main power switch on the console, slamming it down with all my strength. But the monitor stayed on. The bus in the feed had stopped now. Its doors were wide open, facing the camera like an invitation. And in the window I saw it. A flicker of movement. A figure standing in the aisle. It wasn't Claire. It was someone else. A shadowy silhouette against the dim interior. Stumbling backward, my flashlight beam danced frantically across the walls of the control room. It snagged on a metal file cabinet tucked away in a dark corner. Driven by a desperate need for answers, I pulled open a drawer. It was filled with old driver's logs, bound in decaying leather. I grabbed the top one. The pages were brittle, the ink faded. The last entry was dated October 31st, 1978. It read, "Test completed. Passenger manifest. 1. Status. En route." My breath hitched. Beneath that decades-old entry, a new line had been written. The ink was fresh, a vivid blue that stood out against the faded script. It said passenger manifest. 2. A cold dread, heavier and more real than anything I'd ever felt, settled over me. Claire. She was the second passenger. The route was still active. And as the distant hum of the machinery grew louder, a horrifying realization dawned on me. The bus was waiting, and I was next. The wind screamed around me as I pulled myself out of the maintenance tunnel, clutching the old driver's log to my chest like a prayer. The desert. It felt different now. Darker, heavier, even under the relentless sun. The horizon shimmered, a heat haze mirage that twisted the air, and out of that distortion, something moved. It was the bus. Number 47. It rolled toward me in absolute silence, its tires gliding over sand that should have swallowed it whole. Its headlights flickered, pale and weak, as if they were struggling just to exist in this world. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to get back in my cruiser and drive until the desert was just a memory. But I couldn't. I was frozen to the spot. The radio on my shoulder crackled, a burst of static that made me jump, and then a voice. Faint, distorted, but unmistakable. "Elena, you have to finish it." It was Claire, my partner. The reason I was out here in the first place? With a long mechanical sigh, the bus hissed to a stop right in front of me. The doors folded open, releasing a stale, metallic breath. Dust swirled around my boots, a silent invitation into the shadows. I peered inside. The aisle was empty. Almost at the very back, a single figure sat facing the window, their silhouette stark against the grimy glass. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the desert's oppressive silence. Taking a breath that did nothing to calm me, I stepped in. The moment my foot hit the cold metal floor, the world outside simply ended. The howl of the wind vanished. The blinding sun and endless sand dissolved into a profound, suffocating darkness. I looked out the windows, but there was no desert. There was only road, an endless ribbon of asphalt stretching forward into an infinite black. The bus was a self-contained universe now, and I had just stepped inside. My hand went to my sidearm, a useless comfort. I started down the aisle, my footsteps echoing in the unnatural quiet. As I got closer, I could see the figure more clearly. It was a woman. Her shoulders were slumped. My throat went dry. Claire. She turned, her movements slow, detached. It was her. They were blank, vacant, staring right through me as if I were a ghost. Her lips moved silently, forming words for an audience that wasn't there. A cold dread, sharper than any fear I'd ever known, washed over me. "Claire, what did they do to you?" whispered. My voice barely a sound. The overhead lights flickered violently. The bus jerked, a sudden, brutal lurch that threw me against a seat. A voice crackled over the ancient intercom system, a voice that was deep, artificial, but had a terrifyingly human quality to it. "Route 47. It's operational." I scrambled to my feet, my mind reeling. The driver. I had to see who was driving this thing. I stumbled forward, toward the front of the bus. But the driver's cabin was empty. The seat was vacant, yet the steering wheel turned on its own, guided by an invisible hand, following that impossible road to nowhere. The dashboard wasn't showing speed or fuel, was lit up with hundreds of routes, looping endlessly on the screens. Each route was labeled with names, and next to each name, a single word: active. My radio buzzed again, a desperate signal cutting through the humming static. "Elena, if you can hear me?" It was Claire's voice, clearer this time, but cracking with strain. "It's not a road, it's a recording. A loop. They didn't just record a route. They built it to loop reality itself. The signal dissolved into a shriek of static, and then died completely. The bus screeched, the sound of metal grinding on metal, and came to an abrupt, violent stop. I was thrown against the dashboard. Catching my breath, I looked up. Through the grimy windshield, I saw lights. City lights. But they weren't the lights of any city I knew. Old neon signs flickered, advertising long-gone brands. Gas stations with vintage pumps. Cars from another era parked along the curbs. It was a world perfectly preserved, stuck in the past, like a fly in amber. Then I saw the reflection in the glass. It was me sitting in the driver's seat. But I wasn't moving. My reflection just sat there, staring forward with the same blank eyes I had seen in Claire. A wave of vertigo hit me. I whipped my head around, looking back into the bus. It was empty, completely empty. No Claire, no silent figure, just rows of vacant seats and the profound, echoing silence. The intercom clicked one final time, the sound as final as a closing coffin lid. Passenger manifest updated. Route continues. The engine roared back to life, a sound that filled the void and shook the very frame of the bus. It pulled away from the curb, merging back onto that phantom road, driving deeper into the darkness of the forgotten city. The desert swallowed the sound, leaving only the whisper of the wind, as if nothing had ever been there. A week later, a highway patrol unit found my cruiser abandoned at the edge of Route 94. The engine was still running, its headlights cutting to lonely paths into the empty sand. Inside, my notepad lay open on the passenger seat. On it, one sentence was scrawled in my own shaky handwriting. "The road doesn't take you anywhere. It just keeps you moving." And beneath it, 2 names were added to the long list I had found in the driver S-log: Claire Donovan, Elena Marks. Beside both names, the same simple, chilling annotation: passengers.